in a very confused way. Like for example, they can just take that it is 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2, which you get 5. They'll not get that 20. Welcome to Special Needs Palace, Faith and Action. For without action, then our faith is dead. This is a channel where we are creating a society that is informed, inclusive, and updated on matters concerning special needs and disabilities in general. Please click on the subscribe button and click on the notification bell for you to be notified anytime a new video is out. And in today's video, we are going to learn about types of learning disabilities. Disabilities which affect learning in terms of numeracy, reading and comprehension, and even writing. Stay tuned and watch the video up to the end. To start, number one, we're going to look at a learning disability or a learning difficulty or a learning disorder that is called Dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is a learning difficulty that is associated with numbers and maths. So in Dyscalculia, a person's ability to understand maths and numbers is really affected. You might find that this person, or rather this individual, has difficulties in understanding maths and cannot be able to use nonverbal cues to solve maths problems. For example, when you're solving a math problem, let's say a simple number like 5 plus 5 is 10. You don't need to add that, because you can even use your fingers to say that this is 5 and this is 5, and when you put together they add up to 10. But in this case, this is an individual who cannot be able to use these nonverbal cues so as to solve a maths problem. So unless you give the counting items, this person cannot be able to solve that math problem. So like you have to give objects that count up to 10 and divide them into halves to show these are 5 bottles, these are another 5 bottles, and you put together so that you can count all of them and make it 10. Unless you do that, this child, or rather this individual, may not be able to understand what you exactly mean. They cannot do math in their head unless they do it practically. Dyscalculia also affects one's ability to arrange numbers and do simple sums like addition, subtraction, division, and even multiplication. A simple example I will want to show you is, let's look at this one. For example, this is 11 plus 12. So when you add 11 plus 12, you'll get 23. But because this individual's math development is not well off until when you help them to improve it, they might disarrange these numbers and just add them in their own way that they think is right. For example, this 11 plus 12, when you arrange them in a different way, they might add this 11 to this 12, and they might add it in a very confused way. Like for example, they can just take that it is 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2, which you get 5. They'll not get that 23 that you're supposed to get. Another time, they can also add it 11 plus 12, and instead of writing 23, they reverse it and write it as 32. So you find that their method of arrangement or their method of addition and solving math problems is greatly affected, and they need intervention for them to be able to solve these math problems and come up with the right answers always. Moving on to the next type of learning difficulty is called Dysgraphia. Now, Dysgraphia is a learning difficulty that affects one's ability to store and retrieve numerals and even letters. what they have learned, or rather what they have seen on the whiteboard, or rather the type of board that they're using to learn, they tend to find it difficult to retrieve the information. They also have difficulty in handwriting and imaginative writing. You find that their handwriting, or rather when they are writing, it's kind of reversed in sometimes, or their spacing is too large. So you find that, if we may use an example, like this is a sentence. This is how an actual sentence should be written. It should be written, I don't know if it's showing, that I am a girl. So in typical cases, we write from the left going to the right. But in this case, you find that someone might write from the right. For you to show, someone is writing from the right going to the left. And also the spacing is not consistent. Like if you look at this, you find that the space between I am, a, and there's a lot of space, then you go to girl. So their spacing is inconsistent, and also they might write in the reversal manner. So the way they see the letters, the sentences, and even the numbers, the way they retrieve it, it is not the way they saw it. So they have a problem in storing what they have seen and also retrieving the same thing that they have seen, which affects their handwriting and even their imaginative writing. You find that these individuals, it's very difficult for them to write something like a composition or come up with a little story in their books or even in their papers and in every test that they have been given to do. And individuals with the dysgraphia are also believed, or rather they also have problems in planning and organization. These are kind of learners that you'll find they have one book. One day they write in their science lesson, the next day they're writing in their English lessons, the next day they're writing in their Christian religious lessons. So they're not so much organized, and unless you help them to get organized, they become so disorganized, and just they have no skills in organizing and even in planning. So the way they disarrange their books, they do not even sometimes write on the straight line. They keep from one line to the other line, and their work is always confused. So this kind of individuals really need assistance and really need supervision. The third type of learning difficulty is called dyslexia. Dyslexia is a learning difficulty that affects one's ability to read properly, for example, short words and even comprehensions. You find that these individuals really have difficulty in reading and in comprehending what they read, be it simple words or even longer sentences and even shorter sentences. And when you give them, for example, a comprehension to read, they might read to completion, but they may not be able to remember what they exactly read, because for them storing and retrieving also is also a problem. So if we may look at an example in dyslexia, something like this might happen. This is the word get. This is the word get, but this learner will read it as tag. This is the word mad, but this learner will read it as damn. Why? Because they have a tendency of interchanging sounds, interchanging letters and everything that they read. And on dyslexia, one problem leads to the other problem, because if you cannot read a simple word as mad, how will you be able to read a long sentence? And because you cannot be able to read that simple word, the mad word, you can also not be able to spell the word mad, because if you have not been able to read, how will you spell it? So the lack The problem in reading leads to problem in comprehension and leads to problem in spelling, because when you're not reading nicely, you'll also not be able to remember, because in your reading you are struggling, so you'll not also be able to spell. So poor reading leads to poor spelling and leads to poor comprehension, and in general this is called language and processing disorder, or rather dyslexia. The fourth type of learning disability is called nonverbal learning disability. From the word itself, the nonverbal learning disability affects one's ability to interpret nonverbal cues. Sometimes you might not want to talk to someone, but you just want to give that facial expression or that signal to show them that something is right or rather not right, but this person may not be able to understand what you are saying. The lack of not being able to interpret nonverbal cues affects learning, because sometimes the trainer or the tutor might not always use the spoken language, or let's say sign language communication. Sometimes they might use nonverbal cues, and because one does not understand the nonverbal cues and the facial expressions, you find that their academic life is affected, and what they could have learned through the facial expressions, or rather the nonverbal cues, is not learned, because their ability to interpret these nonverbal cues is affected. These individuals might have so well developed vocabularies, they might have good reading skills, but when it comes to nonverbal cues, they just don't get it. And the last type of learning difficulty is called oral written language difficulty. These are individuals who are affected in their understanding on what they read or even what is spoken to them. Their level of understanding is a bit low, and they just do not get or understand what they read or even what you tell them. And because they have trouble in understanding the written and even the spoken, they also have trouble in expressing themselves, whether written or orally. Sometimes they would want something, but how they can just express themselves, they just do not know. They end up suffering or just having difficulties because expressing self has become a bit difficulty. That was all for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. See you next time. We shall look at some of the solutions we can offer to individuals with learning difficulties, so that we can help them build on their strengths and come up with the best out of these individuals. Please subscribe if you've not subscribed, and click on notification bell, and also like the video. See you next time. Thank you so much for staying here.